education, you can go to the mikveh, but go ask your own Rav. And she didn't know that, and it was very, very helpful for me to say that. Now, I don't know if she asked a Rav or didn't ask a Rav or whatever. That was not my business. But, instead of women deciding, oh, I can't do this, I can't go to the mikveh, I think that this pamphlet and people's knowledge about these issues is very, very important. And I'm going to leave the BRCA decision to the physicians to talk about, because I'm not as qualified to do that. So enjoy the evening, and once again, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So really, I want to say welcome to everybody. Thank you all for coming. And I especially want to thank Sandra and Kenny Lazovic for opening their home and for starting out with such beautiful stories and connection. And I really want to also thank you so much for your dedication to seeing this project through and for being part of creating hope and healing. And that gives me the opportunity also to say thank you to everybody else who is involved in the project, because it was a long project that had many steps. And I'm going to actually read everybody off by name because I don't want to forget anybody who is involved. And it's not in a specific order, but Sharon Grossman, Dr. Sharon Grossman, Leanne Kastner, Michal Machtin, Dr. Pnina Moore, Yael Rakoff, Michal Ronas, Esther Salem, Bela Samter, Jordana Shore, Rabbanit Shani Tarragon, Sarah Trapper, Rachel Ann Analek, and Dr. Naomi Baum. So thank you all to those of you who are here, and thank you to all of those who are not here but for being part of the process. Thank you to Thrivacious for co-hosting this and for being our partners also in creating the booklet. Thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for letting us be at this occasion. And thank you all for being with us. The Eden Center's mission is to educate, empower, and advocate for women's health, their physical health, their emotional health, their spiritual health, and increased intimacy education. And we do that using the mikveh as a platform to achieve those goals. We also try to make the mikveh a more welcoming space for everybody and make it accessible to every woman who wants to be there. In addition, we create resources for crisis and life cycle moments, and really try to make all of those things available so that we can enhance Jewish women's lives and the Jewish family. Tonight, before I say that, we do things in a couple of ways, and I just want to give you a quick outline. We do professional training for mikveh attendants and chatan and kala teachers. We do community programming like tonight's evening. We do mikveh education of all different kinds, and we create resources like Birkat Emunah, which is a resource for women going through infertility and miscarriage. We created a guide for mikveh attendants about breast cancer. We have a poster, which is often a poster, but this is a magnet you're welcome to take at the end, about awareness to changes in your own breast that we have put in mikvahs. We created a beautiful spiritual enhancement for when you go to the mikvah that puts spiritual preparation along with the physical preparation. We just recently created a little tefillon for weddings. We do a lot of different activities. And the newest addition is Hope and Healing, which we're here to celebrate tonight, which gives medical, emotional, and halachic guidelines for women going through BRCA diagnosis or breast cancer to go to the mikveh. And the need for resources like this was something that became very obvious to me when I was interviewing women about their experience at the mikveh. And I interviewed somebody who, as an aside, mentioned that she was a breast cancer survivor. And in the process, she told me how difficult it was to go to the mikveh during that time, how the preparation was difficult, how it was very emotionally difficult for her dealing with all the changes in her body and what that meant. She especially emphasized that she did not want to feel pitied by the mikveh attendant who would see her scars or somehow, see her body as different. And that made her not go to the mikveh for an entire year until she was actually ready to go with a friend instead of with an attendant. And with her story in mind, we decided to create sensitivity training about breast cancer that we do in our course for mikveh attendants. And then we created the printed resource that I showed you. But in that whole process, it became very evident that women also needed information. How, when they could go, what were the different aspects of it. And when we started to talk about it and discuss that we were going to be doing this, many different people heard about it. And I'm going to get emotional, but a few months ago, the daughter of that woman called me. And she said, you know, I really did not understand why all of this was so important, but I just had a mastectomy, and I could really use this information. And then I started to ask her about her story and what happened and how she discovered, and it became very clear that a night like tonight, where we talk about BRCA and the effects and the genetics, and we discuss what are our chances of passing it on to our children, was something that we really need to think about in our community as well. Mm-hmm. And that is part of why we're here, for our sons and our daughters as much as for ourselves. So breast cancer is a serious issue in our community. Over the last couple of years, the number of women with breast cancer has gone from 1 in 9 to 1 in 6 to 7. And in Tel HaShomer, I was recently there speaking to the geneticist who told me it probably is closer to 1 in 5 to 6, which you can agree with or disagree.
In Jerusalem, we're much better condition.
But our awareness about the BRCA gene and the search for preventative treatments has also risen. And so there are two goals for this evening. The first is to educate us about the important topic of BRCA, and to arm you with knowledge so that you can make informed decisions and reduce the number of people, women and men, who suffer as a result of BRCA. And the second is to celebrate the publication of Hope and Healing. We have wonderful speakers tonight. I'm going to start by inviting Kathy, the CEO of Thrivacious, to come and say a few words about Thrivacious, and then I will introduce you to the other speakers.
Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm Kathy Kudiak. I'm the Executive Director of Thrivacious, totally volunteer position. I'm an oncology physician assistant. I've been a PA for about 38 years, and I retired in June, and then now my love is Thrivacious. So I just want to quickly tell you a very fast story. Imagine that you're 28 years old, you find out you're BRCA positive, but you're also told that you have breast cancer. And you're 28 years old, you just started your career as a young attorney in LA. You go through all your treatment, you decide you want to take a break. You pack up and travel around the world, you land in Israel and fall in love with Israel and decide that you want to stay and make Aliyah. So you don't know Hebrew, but you're looking for some post-treatment support in English. There isn't any. And you're meeting several other women who are in the same boat who also cannot find any English support. So you start your own Amuta. That's the story of Alona Metz. She's our founder and our former director. Baruch Hashem, she got married last summer and moved back to the States to be with her husband, and that's when I stepped in. She went from starting an Amuta with about 3 women to now 150 women and growing very quickly. We have monthly workshops on all kinds of teaching coping skills, healing therapies, art therapy, music therapy, martial arts therapy, journaling, everything. We have a 3-day annual retreat. We just finished our second retreat in September, which was our retreat participants called it life-changing and transformative, and it's very, very wonderful. We have an online community, and we have a connections program, a one-to-one where we buddy women up, either mentors and mentees, or buddies going through similar experiences for one-on-one support. So if you know anybody, or anybody in this room fits the description of Women for Thrivacious, or you know anybody, we include previvors, women receiving treatment, survivors, caregivers, all English, everything's in English, and it's for women. So thank you very much for coming, and just really, really grateful to have
Can I
Dr.
just ask you,
Grinshpun.
if it's just breast cancer, you do it all?
No, thank you, all cancers. And many of the women in Thrivacious are in their 30s and 40s with all kinds of cancer. Okay, thank you.
So as I mentioned, there are a few goals for this evening, and one of the purposes is to celebrate her hope and healing, and I want to invite Edita Lubin, whose family sponsored the English language publication in memory of her mother, Deanna Lubin, to say a few words. And I want to say that from the little I've heard about your mother, it seems to me that an educational evening would be exactly what she would want to do and what she would have done in her own community.
Thank you all for coming. Some people here actually knew my mother, Alea Shalom. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer at age 42. And as I wrote in the dedication of the booklet, thank God, she recovered completely from the breast cancer. But she didn't just leave it behind her. She took it on as a mission to educate women about breast cancer. She did it through our local Hadassah chapter. She was involved in those cards that Sandra mentioned, getting them out to schools and to women so that they could do breast self-exams. And I never actually spoke with her about the connection between breast cancer and the mikveh, but I'm sure that as a Jewish mother and having a observant home, it would have been very important to her. So when I saw this opportunity to partner with, to dedicate this booklet in her memory, it felt very, very fitting. And I'm very grateful to Naomi and the whole group that put together this booklet for providing this resource and giving us the opportunity to make this meaningful dedication in her name.
We're going to have a number of speakers, and I'm going to invite you to ask questions at the end. But the first person to speak is Dr. Albert Grinshpun, who is a practicing medical oncologist and a BRCA researcher at Hadassah Hospital. And I thank you already for addressing us. And let's do the technical together. Is there anybody who does not understand Hebrew at all?
No. Just accessible.
Maybe like 5.
Backwards, okay.
Oh, it's in English.
Yeah, it's in English. But in case Albert gets stuck, then...
No, it's in English. Okay. It's let's make it more like a talk, not a formal lecture. My name is Albert, as he said, and thank you for the invitation. I think that education and prevention generally is the best way to tackle this problem. To continue what you started, Jerusalem, a recent survey, an Israeli survey, found that Jerusalem is the place with the lowest incidence of cancer in Israel. So we can be calmer. And if we look about the percentage of surviving and everything regarding that, also Jerusalem is the first place in the country. The lowest place is the Haifa area. So if you have someone you love, tell them come here. And so Jerusalem and Yehuda v'Shomron is the lowest places in Israel, so we're fine. I'm a medical oncologist in Das Karim in the Sharet Institute, and I also do some research about BRCA, BRCA we call it, and I studied from different aspects. I studied different cancers in BRCA, not just ovarian and breast, which is the usual, we'll speak about it, and I also study the microbiome, the bacteria in the gut, and now we're starting a new project to look for the gut bacteria in BRCA carriers and families and patients. It's something new, and in Israel we have, happily or not happily, more people, so we can study that. So we try to go into that, and we'll talk a bit about it later. So when we look on every cancer, we can break it into a few parts: the epidemiology of that cancer, the risk factors, the management, and the prevention. So if we try to focus on breast cancer, and we look at the risk factors, and we say, okay, I will not talk about treatment today. I will talk only on prevention and BRCA, which goes into the risk factors. But before, we can take a step back and look what are the risk factors for every cancer. For example, breast cancer. There are many risk factors. Some of them we can change, some of them we cannot. If we live in Jerusalem, we can change it. We can go to Haifa, or the opposite way. If we have a mother or a grandmother with breast cancer, we can change it. It's given. For example, if we do some sport and physical activity, we can choose to do more and lower the chances of breast cancer and many other cancers, or we can not do sportive activity and we will affect the risk the same. This is the grandma picture. Additional factors, it's hormonal factors. As you know, early age or many cycles of menstrual cycle, we say as more cycles the woman has during her lifetime or until menopause, more cycles is more protective. It was thought that many children and many pregnancies is protective. But a recent study, and like in medicine everything is confounding and everything is weird, so a new study from the States 6 months ago said that more pregnancies is more risk. In opposite to millions of other studies that says that more pregnancies is less risk. What is true? Nobody knows, so we can go on with the children's stuff. Alcohol, obesity, and physical activity. We said less alcohol, less obesity is better. But again, before menopause, it's good to be obese from the perspective of breast cancer. After menopause, it's bad. So we can maybe eat now more than eat less. Everyone should think about their own. In addition, mammographic breast density. Mammography, which is an X-ray, we can call it an X-ray of the breast. And here you can see the least dense and the most dense. It's a given fact. You do the mammography and you see your density. And it's the same as looking for the sun in a cloudy day. If there's a lot of clouds, the mammography doesn't work a lot. Please again. Here we can see a tumor in red in very not dense breast, which can easily be detected. And here, in a very dense breast, if we will remove the red circle, I think that many of us, I'm for sure I will not find a tumor. So we know that density, and people who do mammography, and it's written there in the answer that the mammography is very dense. So today, more and more, we recommend for these women to do MRI. MRI, even better. And now we went to the inherited factors. We said that about 10% of the breast cancer are related to inherited factors. BRCA1 and BRCA2 is the most famous and they're responsible for most of the cases of inherited breast cancer, but not only. And to understand more nuances, we need to understand what is a mutation. We said that mutation in the BRCA1, BRCA2 gene can cause breast cancer. So there are different types of mutations. I love this illustration. The normal is a beast. Every gene, it's a sentence with 4 letters of the genomic code. Our body and everything is encoded in the DNA. The DNA is like an enormous book. It's 3 billions in English, right? 3 billion letters, and the letters, there are 4 letters, and there are long sentences, and we call the sentences genes. So if we will do some analogy for mutation, the normal word should be beast, but there can be a substitution mutation, it will be feast. Insertion, it can be breast, share. It can be deletion, so it's best, or inversion between letters. And there are even more sophisticated problems that can be translocations or fusions, and genes can break. So there are millions of other alterations and problems. So, and this is related to people who say, I did some tests and the test was normal equals I'm fine. I don't need to do anything. So we need to think about it because the genetic, the science and everything is moving very fast forward. So someone who did some tests 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago they checked for substitutions and insertions, and that's it. Maybe now we know the deletions, inversions, and million other stuff. So something that was done many years ago, maybe it's not relevant today. So the BRCA1 and 2, they encode two different genes that they're responsible for repairing double breaks in the DNA. When there is a double break in the DNA, the BRCA1 protein comes and fixes. It's autosomal dominant. What does it mean? That if one of the parents has a faulty gene, there's a 50% that the gene would go to the next generation, and next. And in the last few years, we had some cases of people who had BRCA1 from their mother and BRCA2 from their father, for example. What happened to them? Nothing. They were fine. Some of them less fine, some of them very fine. It seems not bad. The first gene, BRCA1, was discovered in 1998 for the first time, and it was named it was found to cause the hereditary breast and ovarian cancer, and later it was called BRCA1. BRCA stands for breast cancer, gene 1, and its prevalence in the general US population, which was tested in many studies, is about 2 people in 1,000 cases. But in Ashkenazi women, it's 2.5%. It means 1 in every 40 women of Ashkenazi origin will have a mutation. And now we have some enigmas in that, because if we take a step back and we take all the countries in the world, and then we will put the countries from the highest prevalence of breast cancer or incidence to the lowest. Where Israel should be? It should be in the upper quarter or something like quarter, or in the upper area, but we are not there. We are in a good place in the middle. Why is that? We have a lot of BRCA according to that calculation.
So only 10% are come from, only 10% of breast cancer.
Still, but we have much more of that population. We have maybe 2 million of Ashkenazi Jews. Maybe
but there may be other genes that are protective.
Or?
And there may be other genes that are protective.
It's a good theory. Maybe we eat hummus here. Maybe hummus protecting us.
Just as Jewish people have a higher incidence of BRCA, they may have a higher incidence of another gene on the DNA, which you said is 1 billion long, whatever, that protects against other breast cancers.
This is one theory. There are other theories that say that maybe the environment here is different, because in Iceland there's also found a mutation in BRCA1. They have a lot of cancer there. Here we have a different bacteria here. Maybe the air is better. Maybe the food is better. But something is different. There? God is closer, the kotel is right here, and there are a lot of theories about that, but actually nobody knows why is that. And in the Ashkenazi women, there are 3 main mutations that are responsible for over 90% of the cases of BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations. So in many places, and it was the standard until recently, not to check the full length of the gene, with the sophisticated methods that check for inversions and substitutions and fusions. The standard was to check for these specific 3-point mutations, and that's it. So many people that say, we checked the breast cancer stuff, it's not genetic. Usually people don't say, we tested for BRCA1 and 2, and it's fine. Most of the people that I'm speaking with, they say, we tested, it's not genetic. And I said, what did you test? And they say, it's somewhere in my email or in some paper, and they bring the paper and they check for these 3 main mutations. But what happens to all the non-Ashkenazi people? What do we check in these women? The 3 Ashkenazi. She can be Yemeni, she can be Ethiopian, she can be I don't know what. We check for the 3 Ashkenazi mutations. There is the health basket, Sal HaBriut, and the guidelines of the genetics, what is paid by the Kupat Cholim. The initial is to check the 3 main mutations. Doesn't matter from which origin or ethnic group, you can be Chinese, they check for the 3 Ashkenazi mutations. Then if it's negative and you're not Ashkenazi or you want to proceed, then they say you can go and back and bring in chayvut and there's enormous dropout. Many of the women, and there are studies on it, they don't finish this process because with the chayvut and the lack of genetic counselors in the Western countries and also in Israel, the whole process can take maybe 1.5, 2 years, and many people say, okay, I had enough, and they live in the middle. And in Hadassah, Professor Peretz that you mentioned before, so she and her team found during the years different mutations that specific for specific origins, and there is Yemeni BRCA1 mutation, and Kurdish and Iraqi. There are no Ethiopians, but actually nobody studied the Ethiopian mutations, and in Ethiopia they're busy with other stuff probably, so they don't study themselves. So now it's going more and more in Israel to study underrepresented population, and recently there is an Arabic mutation, and it's going more and more. Another thing that is important to know, as I said in the beginning, that it's not hereditary breast and ovarian cancer syndrome gene. There are many other problems that we can see in men and women, and we see the general population. It's about 1 in 8, 1 in 9, and we say that a lady with BRCA1 mutation, she has up to 80% lifetime risk of breast cancer and ovary, but in addition there is increased risk for pancreatic cancer, and in men there's also increased risk for prostate cancer. So today in Hadassah and in other hospitals we say that people, not only women with BRCA1 or 2 mutations should be in follow-up, also men should be in follow-up. Pancreas both sexes, but prostate men should be checked. And the best way to beat the disease is to prevent it or to make an early diagnosis. When it's small, it's better, it can be cured. So we recommend today for men and women to be in a high-risk clinic. Maybe the name is not very appealing, but still we call it high-risk clinic, and we have high-risk clinics in Hadassah, and I know that in other hospitals it also exists, so we recommend it for everyone. In the books, this is the classic definition. When to suspect BRCA1 and 2 and to send person for a test. Ashkenazi. This is the first thing. And every Ashkenazi with a relative with breast and ovarian cancer should be examined by the book. If he's not Ashkenazi, so people that have high-risk features in their families, such as bilateral breast cancer or something, or breast cancer in very young age. And today there are voices that are, from example, the head of the genetic service in Shaarei Tzedek, Professor Lahad, I think the name, that she pushes, and there are voices in the United States also that say that maybe the future is checking everyone. When you get to 18 years old or 21 or go to the army, we should offer you, okay, now let's check your genetics. And there are a lot of arguments, pro and against, to do this examination, because as we said, we had a lot more BRCA carriers than cancers. And there is a lot of questions why during the years the BRCA mutation didn't disappear. If it is such a terrible mutation, it just harmed, why it's there? Why it doesn't disappear? So one theory is that the disease is coming after the person has children. So it's too late. The genes move to the children, and then the person will get the disease. But there are different theories that say that BRCA carriers have better fertility, and they get more children more easily. So during the years, maybe 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 800 years ago, it was better to have some advantage. And there is other provocative studies that say that maybe people with BRCA 1 or 2 mutation, they have higher intelligence.
So sorry.
And a few years ago, it was found that in the process of memory creation, there are double breaks in the DNA of the neuron. And who fixes double breaks? BRCA1 and BRCA2. So if you have BRCA1 or BRCA2 that fixes or not fixing them, because if it's a mutation, the fixation is worse. So maybe it affects somehow the memory or the intelligence or whatever. So it's still open, but nobody wants to do a test to take, for example, all those who did psychometry and they got 800 to test the BRCA from them, and then take all the others who got 300 or 200, I don't know what the lowest, and to check the prevalence of BRCA there, and to do all the confounding, the socioeconomic and the age and sex and everything. And it said, there is like it's not a rumor, but it said that in the medical school it's much more prevalent, BRCA1 and 2, and we see it we have a genetic oncogenetic meeting every week that we go through all the patients or people who did tests and they came positive. So we see medical student. Maybe they're just more aware, but still, it's a fact.
It's the drink, it's the alcohol.
And the risk management strategies, as I said before, many people ask me, why do you send me to a genetic test? I will do a genetic test, I will get a terrible result, and then I will go until the age of 120, this is our standard. Until 120, I will go with the knowledge that a bomb here, that I'm having a mutation and it's ticking and it will explode any moment. So why do you send me to do a test? So, ta-da, we're sending to do the test because every gene, most of the genes, not every, but most of the genes and most of the mutations today, we can create a package of prophylactic or preventive strategy. So if we say that this gene, X gene, will cause breast cancer, so we can prevent it. How we can prevent it, or to do an early diagnosis, and it's today in the basket, in the health basket. It's not, we don't need your private insurance or something like that. If you have BRCA1 today, you will get MRI from the age of 25, 30, annual MRI, breast MRI from the health basket. You don't need to pay for it. You don't need to fight with the Kupat Cholim for that. You will get it. Another recommendation, it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is the most important, it's like the Tanakh, they say, Tanakh of the medicine. It was published in 2002. They took women with BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutation, and they said after you will finish with the children stuff at the age of 40 or 40 something, we recommend you to do oophorectomy, to remove the ovaries. Today it's between the age of 35 or 40. Today the recommendation is to remove the ovaries. Why to remove the ovaries? We can see it here in hundreds of women. This is women who had oophorectomy. These are women who didn't do the surgery. And this is cumulative proportion without breast cancer. Okay? Without breast cancer, with breast cancer. The removal of the ovaries at younger age lowers the risk significantly to get a breast cancer. That, together with MRI and a close follow-up, we recommend for women to come to the high-risk clinic once every 6 months and to do annual MRI, every 6 months ultrasound, and the other 6 months MRI.
Is that a hormonal effect?
Sorry?
Is that a hormonal effect?
Yes.
By getting rid of the ovaries?
This is what we say, yeah.
Right.
And another thing which became popular and now is getting less popular is they call it the Angelina effect. After Angelina Jolie, I think, don't remember the year, it was about 7 years ago, that she said that she was found BRCA carrier, and she decided to remove both breasts, and she was quoted to say that she wants to be a mother for little children. She wants to eliminate the risk totally and to remove, to do bilateral mastectomy, we call it. And today it's an option. It's not very commonly used option. Most of the women today don't choose to do that. Why? Because still there are no studies that show that it prevents or saves more lives. Why is that? Because we say that if you do annual MRI and ultrasound, you still can find it. And the second thing, it's a major surgery, but still after a very major surgery, sometimes there are still small breast tissue that is left. So even after you do a big surgery and everything, and traumatic and everything, still there is a small risk that something is left behind. So still you have to be in follow-up and everything. So if you balance the pros and cons, still it's not a very popular choice.
Are we taking questions at the end, or?
It's okay.
No, if you're asking a woman to remove her ovaries at 35 and 40, it's a lot earlier than menopause, and I'm assuming she can't take hormone replacement therapy.
We don't recommend that.
So then how do you do with all the secondary effects of a woman going through menopause at such a young age? Because those of us who have gone through menopause, there are side effects of that are uncomfortable that the hormones can help out. So you keep telling a woman at a young age both to go through menopause and to be uncomfortable. So maybe you raise that against death, but how do you deal with someone's, with those?
You are correct.
Mm-hmm.
The regular treatment today, the adjuvant treatment after breast cancer surgery, in those who are ER positive, estrogen receptor positive breast cancers, is ovarian suppression usually at young age. So we see the effects of early menopause, and it's super significant effects, and it super lowers the quality of life in many aspects. But still, in that case, it's like life versus longer life versus lower morbidity versus mortality, you can call it. And it's a very problematic choice, but I will make it one step further. We had a conversation. A young lady came, she has BRCA1 mutation, and she said that she wants to do a PGD, pre-gestational diagnosis. She wants to get pregnant, and she wants to choose the fetus, and she wants that the fetus will be BRCA negative.
Can you do that?
Yeah, we can do it. Easily. And she said, I want the fetus, my future girl or boy, we can choose. I want the boy and the girl, let's make it more, I want the boy and the girl BRCA negative. And there was a lot of arguments, and many people think that it's not, in 2019, it's not ethical to do that, and that BRCA mutation is not like blindness or something like that. If someone will ask, I don't want my child to be blind, please choose the specific embryo that will be without the blindness gene. Blindness is fine. Deafness, some people say maybe not. And BRCA, many people say it's not legitimate to select that. It affects the quality of life, for sure. But where's the cutoff? Next we'll say, I don't know, redhead or something. Gingy, it's not. So today, the most of the medical community addresses this issue of the early menopause as this is what we have until now, and this is the best we have. But for sure, it's major life event and affects everything.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm an oncologist, and my understanding is that Angelina Jolie herself has been taking hormones because she went through early menopause, which has led to a lot of discussion over whether it's safe or not. And we don't know for sure whether it's unsafe, but there are medical oncologists who recommend it specifically to relieve the symptoms, and it's something under a lot of debate and a lot of discussion, and it may depend on what you talk about.
I know, according to the official American guidelines, it's not recommended. For sure, there are people who say differently, and for everything in medicine, there are studies against and pro, but still in the guidelines, the guidelines are against.
Okay, so I was a patient, and I am BRCA2, and I did have my ovaries removed when I was 37, and it's very significant. But the studies show that the women who make the decision either to do the prophylactic mastectomy or prophylactic oophorectomy have a first-degree relative or a very close friend who died of the disease, and that's usually enough of a motivating factor for the women who choose to.
Just on that note, I was in New York this time last year, and there was a massive, almost row, like heated discussion that became like lots of people shouting about this exact argument of whether or not it's the oophorectomy first or the mastectomy first, on the pure basis that these women that were having the oophorectomy first and younger ages were really suffering from a lot of psychological issues that weren't being raised in the genetic sort of office type thing. And it's just interesting because it's already like a year ago, and there's a whole group of women that I'm on a forum with, and it's become a very emotive, heated debate. Like, I think it's raging still all around the world now, but it definitely in New York that they're saying that there needs to be more debate, there needs to be more conversation about giving women at a younger age oophorectomies, and then them having the fear of not having any hormone replacement, but having all these other very major, I mean, meeting women that have experienced, ended up being hospitalized, like in terms of like in mental institutions, because they lose all track, and they're, that all the way to the extreme of suicide, and from mildly not enjoying life to that level. So just to add to the conversation, that it has become quite heated. In the medical eyes, many look at things at the bottom line. Overall survival. People who live or die, because it's difficult to measure sometimes quality of life. So people look overall survival, those who live or not. And all the studies that took women and they did risk-reducing mastectomy, we call it. It's not prophylactic or oophorectomy, we call it risk-reducing because it's not eliminating this, it's just risk-reducing. So performing risk-reducing mastectomy versus close follow-up, the end of these trials were similar overall survival. So now the recommendation is not to do the surgery, because they say that probably the effect of the surgery might be worse than getting cancer early diagnosed with all the treatments and everything. So this is the current consensus, but it might change next week. We spoke about it. And we have like 2 last slides. Okay. So we said that about 10% of breast cancer is inherited, is related to inherited mutation, and BRCA1 and 2 is the most common cause of that inherited breast cancer. But with the advancement of the genetic science, we see that there are the list of other genes is getting longer and longer every day. And if we take now a lady, for example, I met 2 weeks ago a lady, she's 24 years old, she's not Ashkenazi, but 24 years old woman with breast cancer, and we check her BRCA1 and 2 and they came negative. And there are a lot of women, very young, that they're BRCA1 and 2 negative, because the list is endless probably, and there are millions of, not millions, but dozens or maybe 100 other genes that can cause the same effect, and they are not tested until today. And this is a very important graph that says what is the cost of sequencing one genome.
the Clinton administration in 2000 or 2001, there's a famous picture, they're shaking hands and they say, now we were putting $100 million to do full sequence of one person in 2000. And there is the Moore's law, which says what will be the expected cost, but something happened here, and the expected cost dropped, and today it's around $1,000. And 19 years ago it was $100 million. Now one genome, one person's genome, is about $1,000. And genetic testing that was done 10 years ago and the cost was 10,000 shekels, now it's 1,000 shekels test. Today, every Wednesday morning, we did last year like American Idol. We choose many companies and we make a discussion, and in the end we chose one company. It's an American company. They do it maybe a third of the price of the lowest Israeli offer, because they do millions of tests probably a month. And we do every Wednesday morning, we send blood of patients, relatives, wherever, every person who will come, and we send it in $250. And they check 130 genes in $250. This test 5 years ago was 5,000 maybe. 10 years ago it was 20,000. And today it's less than 1,000 shekels. And we check 130 genes, and from our preliminary data, we examined around 500 people in the last 18 months, half of them with breast cancer. We have around 14% of detection of pathogenic genes, of mutations. Most of them not BRCA1 and BRCA2. So we see not only in Ashkenazi, but also in Ashkenazi, we see a lot of other mutations, and this is probably the future. So in conclusion, and we'll have time for questions, we know that inherited mutation can increase the risk of developing cancer. In recent years, we know that there is rising availability of panel testing. Why it's called panel? Because we choose specific genes and we test them. We're not doing, as I said, the whole genome, because there are a lot of areas in the genome that we're not aware of. We not still know what are the exact function of them, so we choose specific genes. But probably in 5 years, and now this is already in research, but people who have extra spare few thousands of dollars can do exome. Exome is 3% of the genome, is the most important areas, but still it's experimental. So today we do panel. Panel is we choose the most important genes and we examine them in less than 1,000 shekels. And we know that preliminary evidence suggests, not only from Hadassah, but also from big centers in the world, we know that preliminary evidence suggests that multi-gene panels may discover and discover additional mutations in high-risk population. And the most important thing is no mutation equals opportunity for prevention and intervention. And I'll be happy to take some questions.
So you would recommend that someone who had been tested like 10 years ago for genetic mutations, that they should go ahead and do this new panel?
If someone was diagnosed at the age of 30 10 years ago, now he's 40 and he wants to know and he understands that he might find something, so yes.
If somebody is postmenopausal, estrogen negative, triple negative, is this the same testing that you would recommend?
So
this 250.
10 years ago, the patient was coming to the genetic counselor. He was asking, what is your ethnicity, where your parents were born, and then they were thinking and building the family tree and the country of origin, and then thinking, let's do that mutation, and then let's do that mutation. And it was everything because of resources and financial issues. And they were checking specific areas. If you were Ashkenazi, let's check the Ashkenazi. If you're not, let's check the Ashkenazi and then the non-Ashkenazi. Today, the test that I said, it's full-length sequencing. So the origin and everything is not relevant anymore.
Children of BRCA positive people. I have I'm BRCA positive. I have 4 kids between 18 and 25. So, I mean, how do I? Nobody's ever kind of answered. Do I take them to genetic? What do I do? What's the practical thing? I take them to where and when? And
We
how?
recommend to go to a genetic clinic, clinical genetics, clinical genetics center, and usually they deal with such families. And we suggest to do the test after 21.
After 21.
Yeah. Or after enough maturity. As a mother, you will say, this one, we should wait with him until 25. Okay.
Thank you. What about women who are positive for BRCA1 or 2 but want additional years for fertility, like into their 40s, that they're trying to have kids? Like, do their risks for certain cancers go up?
For uterine?
For certain.
For certain. We know that the risk is not going up. We know that not removing the ovaries will not make the risk go down. The risk is not going up more because it's up to 80, so
Right.
higher is almost.
I'm saying, can those women go till like 45 or?
We usually
42?
we don't recommend it usually, and if sometimes happens that people can get married at 40 or even after 40. It's not a rare event. It's very problematic. There is no answer for that. So we can ask for, we can tell women sometimes that you can do a hysterectomy, but before we can recommend a hysterectomy. In the end, the woman decides, of course. But we can have an open conversation and say, okay, now you're 40s, for example, or maybe we should make this talk before at the age of 35. We said, okay, you're 35 years old. We recommend a hysterectomy in the next few years. You can maybe take some part of the ovary and to put it in the freezer or something like that. Or if you have a partner, you can freeze fertilized eggs and to put them for future moment or something like that. But there are no clear solutions for that. It's very problematic. Yesterday I had a lady in the clinic. She's not married. She was diagnosed at the age of 34 with breast cancer, and it's ER positive, estrogen receptor positive, and pregnancy is a rise in estrogen. So we recommend some pause between the cancer and the pregnancy. And she's 35, and the gynecologist say, okay, from 35, the chances to get a spontaneous pregnancy is getting lower and lower. So they said, you need to choose something, to decide, and it's a very difficult decision.
Is she married?
Now she has a partner. Yeah. Now she said, I don't care about marriage. We can arrange everything. But she's on hormonal therapy, so she should stop it and wait. But still, we recommend few years between pregnancy and the cancer. But if she will wait those years, she will be around 40. So her chances to get spontaneous pregnancy will be lower than now. So it's a problem.
I know I asked the question.
That's it. Sorry.
I've just been hearing about the estrogen receptor positive and estrogen receptor negative. Does that have anything to do with the BRCA gene, or that's just the type of cancer?
We know that patients with BRCA1 mutation, they usually have estrogen receptor negative. We call it triple negative, ER, PR, and HER2 negative. And patients with BRCA2 mutation, they usually have ER positive cancers. It's different treatment, different management, and different.
Is this more prevalent in the Jewish population, or that's just a side effect? I mean,
The what?
BRCA, the gene.
Yeah.
It's much more prevalent in the Ashkenazi population.
But in the general in the non-Jewish population of European origin,
No.
it doesn't exist?
It exists like in the general non-Jewish European.
But not as high as in the Jewish population.
Ashkenazi, not as high in
Ashkenazi. Is that because of all our inbreeding, or is that our
we know that there are a lot of diseases that affect the brain in Ashkenazi Jews. Tay-Sachs, Niemann-Pick, Gaucher, etc. It's diseases of the lipids of the brain. And all of these diseases, they're affecting specific pathway in the brain, and there are theories today that these diseases, again, those who are carriers of these genes, they might be a bit smarter, which gave some evolutionary advantage during the medieval days. We could count better money or something like that. We counted it faster. Or cystic fibrosis, which is a very, very common disease. Not a disease, very common gene. But there are studies that show that patients who are not sick with cystic fibrosis, just carriers of this gene, carriers of cystic fibrosis, they are more resistant to tuberculosis. And tuberculosis was a major plague, major disease, and major public health issue in the, 500 years ago. So all the Ashkenazi guys and ladies with the cystic fibrosis gene, they were happy. So maybe the BRCA is something playing on that.
Thank you so much. We'll continue to ask questions later. I want to introduce Leanne, who is a marketing specialist, a poet, and tonight she's here in the hat of being a previvor.
I really appreciate the privilege of being asked to come and talk at an event like this, and it fills me with such light and such joy to be able to go around and talk about my experiences, because I really have started to understand more and more the impact that it has for women, for their families, partners, cousins, aunties, uncles, anyone with a connection, somebody that they love and that is adored, trying to make sure that we all have the longest, healthiest, happiest life possible. And when they meet me and they hear about my story and my family, there is sadness in my mum was only 48. She was diagnosed at 44. I was only 15 years old. And at that point, my mum was not like me. I've always been a little bit outspoken. I was at an audition this morning, so I would look out my face on something. Netflix is coming from LA to Israel in a major way. And just through some of the poetry stuff that I started on the back of becoming an author and having this book out there, lots of other things started to sort of cascade around it, as well as you said, running a marketing company. I now am a voiceover artist, which has led me to some more acting type things. So I spent my morning doing play skits. It felt like I was back at school. It was a lot of fun. So you'll see whether I get the job or not if I appear as a British lawyer somewhere. So more than 20 years ago, my quiet, shy Irish mum, having moved over from Ireland to the UK, spoke at an event really similar to this, and she was terrified. I was about 15, and she was babbling away about, well, I don't know if I should do it. Can you sit next to me? Can you hold my hand? And I just said, just do you, just be you. She would hold court in every hospital that she ever saw. She was in loads of different units, and she'd end up with all the nurses, sometimes the doctors as well, would sit down, and she'd provide food for the staff. It was not just your usual grape and biscuits. She was making sandwiches in the bed for these women. And so I said, just imagine you're in the hospital bed and you're just chatting with your normal, warm Irish lilt to her accent. And it went crazy. She literally embraced, I reckon, more than 1,000 women in several shuls all around England. And she became this face. She went out, she had a mastectomy and the right breast removed. And we had some really funny moments with trying with the prosthesis back. We were talking 1995. It was kind of very new and it didn't look right. It was at the chin, and she just did away with it. She's like, I'm just going to go without it. And she really, really was terrified, and breast cancer basically forced her to start talking publicly. And her thing was all about, and it really unfortunately hasn't changed that much today, but her belief was that so many women were hiding and not coming forward with maybe there's something not quite right because they were terrified. Because the ultimate thing was that you're going to lose your breasts, and that's scary, and we're women, and the sexualization of our bodies is so insidious in society that she just cottoned on to this, having never been worried about her physicality. She was a very large woman, and did talk about not caring about it, to the point that when she was unfortunately not very well, she was thrilled to be getting into like a size 12 for the first time in her life, and we joked that it was unfortunate under the circumstances, but she just wasn't connected to her body in that sort of general normative way. She didn't really care. You know, she'd take us to school in a big red fluffy dressy gown, you know, nothing discreet, the hair all smushed from the night before, slippers, you know, those slippers that are smushed at the back and half off, and she'd go out in the ice and the snow and just take us to school. And you know, she was that embarrassing mum running down the school gate in the dressing gown because you forgot something. So when she went and she presented, her take on it was very much, at the time, the mantra that started going around that was fairly new then, was save the woman, not the breasts. Save the woman, not the breasts. And I still feel it's relevant today, that from my experiences and meeting women and understanding their real fears, especially when you're talking about women finding out that they're BRCA positive before they've had children and before they've, you know, met the partner of their dreams. And I went through it sort of all upside down and higgledy-piggledy, because I'm here today, I'm a single mum with 3 getting bigger, crazy boys. And so I'm single, and I had to go and figure out what I was going to do with the news of finding out I was BRCA positive at the age of 35. For me, as somebody said in one of the other talks, I think it's very relevant, depending on what you've experienced in your close family circles or friends. And if you've seen a lot of breast cancer, the women that I meet tend to be running for the mastectomy. And if you've seen a lot or been exposed to even one family member with ovarian cancer that suffered and even lost their lives, they're much more, you know, nervous, and their questionings are like, please take my ovaries now. So yeah, I opened up this topic. I became very public on Facebook before the book was my kind of bits and notes and at the time, and to the point that when I came back, I was literally about 5 days, I think, post mastectomy surgery, and I got a knock on a door. A girl had lost her mum and her grandma in about 3 months, found me on Facebook, driven from Ramat Aviv somewhere, and wanted to know if I could have coffee and talk to her. And how does she get her breasts removed, like, within 7 days? And I must know, and I must take her to the doctor that did this to me because she needed it. And she hadn't even been tested yet. She didn't even know her genetic status. And this is only like 4 or 5 years ago. That girl did go on to have a preventative mastectomy, and we've now become friends. It's like, you know, you form this like little cheerleading group that we cheer each other on. Another side to that with women that are facing this whole BRCA story, and the Angelina effect for me was very, very real. Most people that meet me are like, oh, you did an Angelina. Okay, yes, sort of. And I think there's a very big and real issue. I'm also a trained midwife, I didn't mention that. I spent 15 years working as a midwife, and I'm now working as a palliative care nurse. Half of my time, 40% of my time, I burnt out on my marketing and this author stuff and flying around backwards to New York and London. And I realised something's not right, and I sort of literally decided within 24 hours, told like 2 people, and got a job within 24 hours looking after a woman and getting into palliative care, which has been really just, I have gained tenfold what I have given as a palliative care nurse, and I now have a secondary, another client, and I'm managing a team of 10 amazing women, and we're all going around being companions to women that are in that position, unfortunate position, but really bringing joy. One of my clients said to me, you bring dignity to death. I mean, that's not very cheery. She was trying to help me with some marketing ploy. I said, I don't really like that, but I prefer to say, you know, that we keep on living with joy. And that's my thing, and that's what I really want to do, is to bring light and the educational side of it, but really The biggest thing is to bring the light. I feel like it's important for me to mention, really sadly, there's a woman that is mentioned in my book. Her name is Gail. She's a non-Jewish friend of mine I met on the first day at university, and she's in the book. And the reason I want to just share this brief story is, again, to bring light to the fact that if you think there's something, lumps and bumps, and it's really easy to not want to deal with it, life's busy, there's a million other things that you need to be doing. You might be BRCA positive, but like you're not sure, and it's a cousin. I have cousins that are still kind of living in a denial headspace, and they don't want to get themselves tested or their children tested. And this story with Gail, especially now hits home as she's in the book, and there's not many friends that made it to the book, as you can imagine. We trained to be midwives together, met her on the first day of university. She was this cuckoo, violin playing, artsy farts. She had 2 easels in her room. Mine looked like an IKEA catalogue. Hers was like 2 easels, a violin, some other fluty instrument things. And she was quirky and out there, but we hit it off. And we were the youngest doing this midwifery program. We were the first young girls to do pre-reg, which meant we weren't nurses. So they basically like ate us alive when we got to the hospital because we were so green. We were like holding hands in the back of the rooms, like terrified to come out and speak to like 10 doctors at a time, giving the summary of what was going on with our patients, because we'd never even stepped foot in a hospital. So we bonded and we went through life together and boyfriends together and breakups together. And then we went through this, our mums got breast cancer together. And our mums, unfortunately, didn't make it together. And she wasn't Jewish, but during the Shiva week, we were so skinned to students that she figured out, very clever girl, that if she drives at a lower speed with the windows down, she'll make it on the amount of money that she had. And if the car stops, she'll leave the car and walk the rest of the way. This was the level of friendship that we had. She was so determined to get to me during that Shiva week. And wow, it's emotional. She came and she was totally like, come on, I want to take you to a river. I'm like, I'm not allowed to leave the house. She was like, this is ludicrous, this is mean, what's going on here? And she actually stayed with me a few days, and at the end of the Shiva we went to a river, and we did a very symbolic letting go of our emotions. And unfortunately, within 6 months, I was doing the same for her, and she lost her mum, and I was holding her hand. Now, at 35 years old, having known about the BRCA gene at the age of, well, really even at 16, 96, 97, there was whisperings about this familial thing, and you've got to be careful, your mum's had this at an early age, and you need to be aware. And yet, at 20, I went to a geneticist, and I had this, we think you're BRCA, that was as far as it got, but we also think you might be carrying from your mother's side and your father's side. That's because of the amount of people in the family that had breast cancer on both sides. But it was all inconclusive and made no sense. And I went on with my life, I got married, had a couple of kids, moved country, got divorced, had a kid with someone else, separated again, and realised I better deal with this BRCA thing, it's not going away. So when people say to me, but life's busy, I'm like, go and be a single mum with 3 kids living in a foreign country with your back against the wall. I was facing actual bankruptcy leading up to the BRCA test, and too terrified to tell my family because it was this shame that I made a bit of a mess. Kind of spent too much money, I was living like I was on holiday, didn't really resonate with what I was spending, and didn't want to tell anyone, so I still went ahead and I got BRCA tested. But at the same time, this friend Gail from university messaged me. She said, oh, I've been for my test, I'm BRCA too, are you? Yes, I'm BRCA1, and we were like, oh, well, here we go again on the journey together. Let's go and get our preventative surgeries, let's see what's going on at the time. It was very quick to, for both of us to be like, okay, this is what we need to do, preventative mastectomy, again, because both our mothers had had aggressive forms of breast cancer and we'd lost both our mothers. And off we went for our MRIs and phoning each other in between, and oh, that was horrible. I had an allergic reaction to the dye, which I've never even heard of, and I don't think it's that common. But that was fun, couldn't breathe in the middle of it, but was so terrified to press the button and tell them to stop, because I knew it could be 6 months to wait for another MRI, and I just made the decision, so I needed to do it. And they were like messaging me saying, you don't seem to be breathing, do you want to stop? And I'm like, no, we'll just do it. Anyway, so off we went for these MRIs. waiting impatiently for our results, I got this bizarrest experience, which I did blog about if any of you are interested, and it went viral crazy. It got 88 shares within 2 hours. My little article on Times of Israel, which was "Cancer for a Day?" ? And that's because I went off to my family doctor, who will remain nameless, and said, oh, and about something completely different. And he went, oh, your MRI results here. Oh, it looks like you have a mass. Oh, it looks like you have a mass on the left side and the right side. Told me it was about 2 centimetres on one side and 1 centimetre on the other. Haven't got any more time, you better go. And this article that I put out there was because I then was standing in the rain in February in Renana going, oh no, that's not good. But I tried to get hold of my doctors that I'd already been in touch with, my plastic surgeon team, the breast surgical team, to get an actual answer about these pieces of paper. Plus it was all in Ivrit, and my Hebrew reading's still not that great. So trying to decipher, and Google Translate wasn't as good, scanning, and literally from like this doctor telling me this at 8 o'clock in the morning till about 6:37 at night, when I finally got hold of somebody that could really explain it to me. Like, oh well, it's like BIRADS 2, BIRADS 3, don't worry about it, you'll have your surgery in 5 weeks, which I did, and thankfully they said there were some changes, but I was one of the lucky ones. Now, Gail, on the other hand, had the similar experience, except hers was much more advanced, and she did need chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and everything became very drastic and very scary. This was 5 years ago, and Gail lost her battle a week ago. And for me, it became just even more reason why I need to do this, and more reason why I need to reach more women on more levels to talk about it and to raise the consciousness just that little bit more, even though we all feel like it's all out there, it's all we see, the pink ribbon, October being like taken over with pink all over the internet. But I know, I had a friend ask me this week to meet for coffee. Her mum's had breast cancer twice, her grandma had breast cancer, and she's like, I think maybe, I'm nearly 40, what do you think? And from my mind, it's those women that I can help, and those women I can wake up, and those women of those families. So with Gail in mind, I'm also standing here tonight to hopefully my crazy story, my journey will inspire one of you to just go and mention it and talk about it. Because genuinely what I write on the front of this book is that I'm an ordinary girl who finally took control of her life, but what I really want to say is an ordinary girl facing bankruptcy with my 3 kids living in a foreign country. Still, I took control of my life because the impetus was there for me, because it was my mum that I watched suffer, and it's me that became, what I say, unmothered. And there's one poem that I'd like to share. I don't know how we are for time. Anyone keeping any time? Want to carry on a bit? I wanted to just share with you a little, like 2 minutes? 2 minutes, okay. I know everyone's getting tired. There was loads of things I wanted to share, and it's a little bit poignant. It was the first thing I read a year ago, and I'll just tell you, it was absolutely terrifying. It was my first poetry slam competition. I was kind of shoved there by the people that helped make this book a reality. It was an ebook, and I got investors, and they made it all pretty. And it was a poetry slam night called What Your Mama Said, and it was all very American, very British, and sense of humour, a bit Seinfeldy in the atmosphere. Everyone was drinking and laughing, and I said, I can't get up, and my title is Unmothered. You know, it was like totally the wrong sort of environment to be saying this, but I'll end my little talk this evening with it because I feel like it's a very poignant poem that has now catapulted my name and me and this book, which is now potentially going to be some sort of straight-to-TV movie, which is very exciting. So yeah, my little ode, my little poem, hopefully again is a painful, poignant, yet important reminder of why we need to be BRCA aware and why the mikveh and this whole project is so close to my heart, and really want to congratulate you all on doing that. Okay. Unmothered. Unmothered is what I became. Unmothered at 20, and my life was never going to be the same. Unmothered at graduation, unmothered on my wedding day. I became a motherless mother. I may board a plane and feel the pain rise, pain for that missing call. Safe flight, she used to say. Don't forget to call when you land. Motherless and moving through my life, immigration and divorce. 3 beautiful grandsons she never got to hold. Motherless or motherful, mothered so deeply for 20 years, her voice still accessible in my mind like a computer file. Motherful as I look into my children's eyes, motherful, full of mother's love, motherful, not unmothered. Thank you. And I do have some copies, if anybody wants one, charity-wise.
Thank you so much. I want to call up Dr. Sharon Grossman. I want to also say Karan Hato for your involvement in creating Hope and Healing. But Dr. Sharon Grossman is a Harvard-trained radiation oncologist, with a master's in public health, and she's a trained Morat Halacha from Matan.
Sandra, thank you for opening up your beautiful home to us this evening. Naomi, thank you for the privilege to mark this milestone, the publication of Hope and Healing, which is several years in the making. It's a guidebook for women who have been diagnosed as carriers of the BRCA mutation or are going through breast cancer, have been diagnosed with breast cancer, going through treatment to help enhance their mikveh experience. And it's particularly meaningful to me tonight that this book is dedicated to the memory of Deanna Lubin. The Grossmans and the Lubins go way back. We have a deep bond, as my father-in-law, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, was the Rav in Memphis, where Deanna lived. And this afternoon, when I heard that there was a connection, I quickly called my sister-in-law and my husband, and they recall your family with such warmth and such love. My husband has vivid memories of your mother standing in front of him with her huge smile. Your family were oskim b'sorchei tzibor. Your father spent much time as the youth director, as the director of the youth committee in Baron Hirsch Synagogue, trying to raise funds for Camp Darom, which was the first Orthodox camp in the South, and brought so many children to Torah and to Judaism. And so it's my hope that through this booklet, your mother, Dina, Chana, Bat, Raphael, Meir, and Minette, should have an aliyah in the schools of the booklet and the women that it helps. I wanted to take just a few moments to describe to you what inspired the writing of this booklet, the halachic and medical issues that it addresses, and how this booklet can have and has already had a profound impact on the lives of BRCA carriers and women with the breast cancer diagnosis. So as Dr. Grinshpun so clearly and articulately explained to us, 1 in 8 women, approximately 1 in 9, or Haifa, maybe a little bit more, women are diagnosed with breast cancer. And it's a little higher in the Jewish population, presumably due to the presence of the BRCA mutation. 1 in 40 Ashkenazi women, as Dr. Grinshpun has explained, carry the mutation, which is 10 times higher than the general population. And it's also present in certain Sephardic populations. Mutation increases the risk of breast cancer, about 80% over the course of her lifetime. Ovarian cancer is also increased to about 50%. And surgery can significantly reduce those risks and, in many cases, can increase the chances of survival, living longer. Women who are diagnosed with a BRCA mutation are young women, and they're still going to the mikveh. According to the Israel Cancer Association, 20% of women diagnosed with breast cancer are under the age of 50, and they're also going to the mikveh. So going to the mikveh and being a BRCA carrier or having a breast cancer diagnosis is very common. And it's not simple to go. If you've had surgery, either prophylactic surgery, risk-reducing surgery, or you've had surgery for breast cancer, you might have an open wound, and that might make going into the mikveh dangerous. You're at risk for infection. And if you're in the middle of chemotherapy, your blood counts might be quite low, and it also might be dangerous to go to the mikveh. Also, treatments for, preventive treatments for BRCA carriers and actual breast cancer treatment can create an interposition or a barrier, or chatzitza, that might invalidate immersion. On a biblical level, if you have an object that covers the majority of the body and is something that one would typically remove, would be considered an interposition. On a rabbinic level, an object that covers the majority of your body or something that one would ordinarily remove would be an interposition. And so any object of any size could be considered an interposition, like my ring. I keep this ring on all the time, but the fact that I take it off when I need dough would make it an interposition. So how do you go to the mikveh after you've had surgery? If you have drains in place, pus, scabs, scars, glue, stitches. If you've had reconstructive surgery, you might have an implant in place or a tattooed nipple. Are those chatzitzot, which would invalidate immersion? If you're getting radiation treatment and you have a little tattoo placed, as Sandra explained earlier, does that invalidate your immersion? How about the creams the doctor's recommending so your skin doesn't get red? Are those chatzitza? And of course, the various chemotherapy delivery devices that hang out of your arm, are they a chatzitza? And so after we published Tikva V'Tfilah about 2 years ago, many women turned to us and said, we would like a booklet for us. The Tikva V'Tfilah was a guidebook for balaniot to help them be more sensitive to the issues that women with breast cancer or women who had a BRCA diagnosis might be experiencing. But now the women turned to us and said, it's our turn. And so, hence the birth of Hope in Healing. So what's it like to go to the mikveh as a BRCA carrier or after a breast cancer diagnosis or in the midst of treatment? So that's the question that I asked a very, very dear friend who completed 6 months of chemotherapy. She said to me, I didn't go. I said, what do you mean you didn't go? She said, well, the nurse said I shouldn't kiss anyone, so I didn't go. My heart broke because first, she could, even if she weren't permitted by the doctors to kiss her husband, at least going to the mikveh would have been able her to touch her husband. Here she is, she didn't touch him for 6 months. Secondly, I realized she probably misunderstood the nurse. As an oncologist, I know that with the exception of the time immediately after chemo and when the blood counts are low, intimacy is allowed. And so I felt very sad because she didn't have the information and she misunderstood. And one of the things we spend a lot of time on in this booklet is talking about intimacy after BRCA testing, positive test, or after breast cancer diagnosis. And it's not uncommon that women don't go to the mikveh after a positive test or being diagnosed with breast cancer because either they think that medically it's dangerous or that their scar, their scab, or their stitches is unequivocally a chatzitza and there's no possible way they could go, or they're just ashamed. They haven't exposed their breasts to anyone, no one has seen the scar, no one has seen how red they are after radiation treatment, no one has seen their balding head, and so they don't go, and they don't know how to deal with it either. This is also a topic that we spend a great deal of time on. Mikveh also raises issues of fertility, and that is best illustrated by the story of a woman named Leora, who herself does not have carry the BRCA mutation, but her husband does. And he asked her, he very much wants to have a child that 100% for certain does not carry the mutation. And so he said he'd like to do IVF. And she doesn't want to do IVF. IVF to select for embryos that don't carry it. She doesn't want it. She says that it's 50% chance that our child will not carry the mutation. Even if our child does carry the mutation, there are things that we can do. And so mikveh night highlights those issues even further.
it like, though, for the mikveh for the woman who carries a mutation, or a woman with breast cancer who actually does go to the mikveh? So I'll tell you the story of Ayelet. Ayelet was diagnosed as a carrier of the BRCA mutation, and she decided, I'm going to have a mastectomy to reduce my risks of developing breast cancer. And right before she had the surgery, she went to the mikveh, and she told the balanit, I'm about to go through this procedure, and I want you to know because the next time you see me, I'll have a scar and I'll have a reconstruction. And the balanit, who was not an Eden-trained balanit, turned to her and said, why are you doing that? You're mutilating yourself. And she was so hurt by the balanit's reaction, but she was very strong, and she explained that I have watched many of my relatives diagnosed with breast cancer, and I'm going to do everything that I can to reduce my chances of developing breast cancer. She left the mikveh, though, destroyed. She had the surgery, and unfortunately, her wound didn't heal well. She had an open wound. And so the doctor told her, you can't go in the water, you can't swim with your wound like this. And she didn't go to the mikveh until she met her friend, who was a balanit, who said, ask your doctor if maybe you can go to the mikveh if you're the first one in. And she did, and the doctor said it was fine, and so she went to the mikveh. But she had no knowledge that this was a possibility or that this could help alleviate her situation. Again, another topic that we discussed in the pamphlet. What's it like to go to the mikveh if you're in the middle of treatment? I'll tell you the story of Yael. Yael is 35 years old, and she is the mother of two children, 9-year-old and 5-year-old. And she has a PICC line in, which is a chemotherapy delivery device, and it dangles, it hangs off out of your skin. And there's actually a picture, I think, in the booklet to see. And she was doing just fine, but she couldn't get it wet because if it gets wet, there's a risk of infection, so she wasn't showering. And then her friends bought her a sleeve, and I'm sorry, I apologize, I have the sleeve right here to show you. I should have brought it up. Her friends bought her this protective sleeve, which is a custom-made sleeve that you slip on, and it's watertight, and she showers with it, and she was thrilled. She spent half hour under the shower enjoying a good shower because she hadn't had one in a while with the PICC line in place. And then she got her period. And she wondered, can I go to the mikveh with the PICC line hanging on my skin and with this sleeve in place? And so she asked one of her friends that she had met during chemotherapy, who was just now done, and she said, you know, I asked my Rav, and he said, no, I can't. And so it was the end of treatment, and I just didn't go. And now the PICC line's out, and then it's okay. So Yael was devastated because here she was, and she said just at the beginning of treatment, and she's going to spend the next 6 months unable to touch her husband. She needed his touch for emotional support. She needed his touch just to help her with activities of daily living, to give herself the daily shots to prevent the line from clotting, to get up from chemotherapy. She says, maybe I'll ask my 9-year-old to help me, maybe I'll ask my 5-year-old to help me. Somehow she got in touch with us, and we spoke with leading poskim in halacha and medicine, who said that yes, she could tovel with the PICC line in place, with the protective sleeve on, for 5 reasons. Reason number 1, it was there to deliver her a life-saving treatment. Reason number 2, it did not cover the majority of her body. Reason number 3, she wanted it there. Reason number 4, taking it out would cause her pain and suffering. And reason number 5, she would need to be separated from her husband for an unacceptably long time. And so Yael taught us many lessons in our interactions with her. One was the importance of asking questions, asking halacha questions, asking if it's permitted to tovel with the PICC line in place, but more importantly, also asking your doctor questions. And in the booklet, we give very detailed instructions of questions to ask your doctor, your halachic authority, your balanit, as you go through each specific treatment, whether it's a preventive treatment for a BRCA carrier or a treatment for breast cancer. And so in the guidelines now, we suggest that if you are having a conversation with your doctor about a chemotherapy delivery device, Ask about a portacath, which is under the skin, has a lower risk of infection, and doesn't present any of these problems of chatzitza. So it's my hope, it's our hope, that this guidebook will enhance the mikveh experience for BRCA carriers and women who are in the midst of breast cancer treatment, and that we will be able to create a companion guidebook for women with other kinds of cancers. Thank you for your attention. And thank you for the support. Enhance the mikveh experience for all women.
I just want to sort of sum up the evening by saying that I hope that you've learned a lot, but I also hope that you're going to take this information and talk to others and share it with your children, your siblings, your parents, whatever you've learned. I hope that if you've learned something, you'll share it in an email or on a Facebook post and like and tag Thrivacious and Eden, and let other people know what you've learned. Read Hope and Healing, and after you've read it, then pass it on to somebody else who might need it, or pass it on to your mikveh lady or your doctor, or anybody who could make good use of it. And Eden cannot survive without all of you and all of your support. And some of you have already supported us, and we appreciate that. And we included in your chairs an envelope and a card so that we invite you to be our partners to continue creating